Romans chapter 8, verse 4, Romans 4:13. Romans 4:13. For the promise that he should be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. There was no law. I have this argument with people all the time. Oh, we need to get rid of the Old Testament, all that law and stuff. Jesus didn't do away with the Old Testament. He fulfilled ceremonial law, and I need a cognitive test tomorrow too. Okay, I'll let the doctor know. Confirmed the rest of the Old Testament. He completed the Levitical law, the ceremonial law, the sacrificial law, and he confirmed the rest of it by faith. Abraham didn't do anything by law. He is the promise of the future seed and even the seed of Jesus, and that's through faith. All of it's through faith. The man's 100 years old when he finally had his baby. Shoot me now. My mama was 37 when she had my youngest sister, my youngest sibling, my only sister. She was like 37. It was like 1997. I'm 15. If Nikki came to me and said, guess what, I got a surprise. First of all, I'd be jumping for joy because that doctor who performed all the surgeries he performed going to have something to answer to me about. So I'm just saying that. But no, I mean, that's tough. He's 100 years old. That's faith. We get mad because 10 days passes and our prayer's not answered. You're praying for a building, praying for families, praying for this. Don't get impatient. Faith doesn't follow your timeline. Abraham's called out of Ur of the Chaldees, takes a 12-year sojourn in Tabor, or wherever that place was, where his dad died, and then finally says, okay, family's gone, let me go. Sounds a lot like that guy that said, Jesus, I'll follow you, except for I got to go say bye to my mama or my wife, and I got to kiss my pig goodbye, whatever that guy said, you know. And there was 3 of them. One had to bury a dad, one had to sell a cow or buy a piece of property he bought, and the other one, I don't know. Got married. Yeah, go figure. So, Jesus told him, don't even worry. You're going to be twisted up for years before you figure life out. You know, when you get Twitter-pated, get married, don't even know your name for a couple of years, you know. So, but anyway, let's keep reading. Verse 14. For if they which are of the law be heirs, faith is made void. Why? Because Abraham was in faith, and the promise made of none effect. I love it. They're over here hanging their hat on the law, and it wasn't even the law that brought him to the promised land. The law was given on the way to the promised land. It was Abraham's faith. Verse 15, because the law worketh wrath. Why? The law is our judgment, not our promise. The law is what brings wrath upon the children of men because we are unable to attain to its place. For where no law is, there's no transgression. Therefore, it is a faith, that it might be by grace. To the end the promise might be sure to all the seed, not to that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. Now, God's promise to Abraham was based on faith, not law or works. I know that Pastor, you're reiterating this. Okay, we'll get it eventually, I'm sure. But Paul reiterated it over and over and over. He spends a whole chapter saying, not of works, but of grace. Not of works, but of grace. Not of works, but of grace. Because we are people of works. We are people who fall into the idea of performance-based acceptance. Right? Where I have to do to be accepted. I don't know all of you history deep, but I know many of you history deep. And with broken homes and trauma and things like that, we become very performance-based. Who does God come to? The broken. So we have to reiterate this fact that I don't have to earn my right with God. I don't have to earn my favor with God. It is of faith. And here's the thing. You know what's funny to me? In the Bible, the Old Testament, first came faith, then came law. And they got tied up in thinking the law replaced faith. What happens when you get saved? Faith. Then discipleship occurs, quote unquote, the law. And we get tied up in thinking the law is what, why didn't I get this? I don't know. It's right here in the Bible. So clear to me. The law, and we get tied up just like Paul is trying to get these folks to understand, these Roman Jews to understand, it's not law, it's faith. It's faith from Abraham, it's faith in the law, it's faith after the law, it's faith in the church age, it's faith, it's faith, it's faith, it's faith. Does not preclude the ritualistic in Christianity. It does not preclude the fact that we come to church and we sing songs and we do sermons and we hand out flyers and all that stuff. It's just an organization to the thing that God did in faith. And the law, I know, I'm stretching a little bit, but the law is also what shows us our need for grace. Shows us our need for all that stuff. We still must preach the law. We still have to preach good behavior. If nothing else, then to remind us that we need grace from God. I want a bunch of Marys. I wish there was a man in the Bible that was comparable. Who? John. I want a bunch of Marys and Johns. The disciple whom Jesus loved. That rests on Christ's bosom. And isn't as concerned with the miracles as he is with the very beat of the heart of God. And David said he desired to have God's heart. Solomon told his son, give me your heart. And we think of Solomon in Proverbs kind of as the father calling to us. When we want God to have our heart, we want to have God's heart. We want to know God. The law worketh wrath, or inability to keep the law, what we know as transgression, means that it becomes essentially a vehicle of God's wrath. The law is only how we see what God's wrath will be poured upon if we're not under grace. The Bible says without blood there is no remission of sin. We need the blood of Christ to cover our hearts so that the sin that is in there is looked over by God. It's very similar to Exodus. And Exodus is before or after the law? Before the law. And what do we see in Exodus? And that final judgment over Egypt. We see the blood on the posts. What made the Hebrew different than the Egyptian? The blood. The blood is what made the Hebrew different than the Egyptian. The Hebrew who decided they didn't want to be covered in the blood would have died, just like the Egyptian did. We don't have a record of it, but maybe it happened. I don't know. But we know theoretically that it's the blood. We have the oracles of God. I'm not a replacement theologian. I don't believe that Egypt. I don't believe that God's done with Israel. I believe we're in the church age when the rapture occurs, Revelation chapter 4, and the great tribulation, or the tribulation occurs, 5 through the end, or not quite the end. When the tribulation occurs, the Jewish nation will once again be God's beacon to humanity. We're going to be up there eating some good food. Think of some chicken fried steak. You know, we're going to be eating some taters. Pecan pie. I'm going to be on the chicken fried steak tater buffet. Y'all can go get your veggies all you want to, because taters won't hurt in heaven. And so, yeah, I love taters, man. Mashed potatoes, fried potatoes. I love potatoes. Potato pancakes, you can do it. Sure can. You take old mashed potatoes. You eat mashed potatoes, what's left over. The next day you form them into patties and you put them in there as pancakes. Uh-huh. Yeah, I've seen that. Before I went carnivore, I was really heavily thinking about it. Now I'm not going to. But anyway, it's not. It's by grace. Where there is no law, there is no transgression, because transgression is the overstepping of law. You say, well, why don't we just get rid of law? Because when God created man, He wrote His law on their heart. It is intertwined in our very fabric. Why? Because God is a God of order. God is a God of justice. He could not create something that did not epitomize His law. Let me back that statement up. He created us in His image, and therefore as image bearers. I like that. The creationists use that, and they're not all totally doctrinally correct to my mind. I don't like soapbox ministry, right, where all they do is creation. The King James, the evangelists that run around doing King James seminars or whatever. I'm just like, I get it. It's cool. You want one hit wonder. But I think we need to be more, whole. But maybe that's why you bring the evangelists in, because you can't cover all those things. I don't know. But anyway, image bearers. If we bear His image, we must bear the law of God too. That's why murder is murder no matter what culture you're in. And you say, what about those headhunters kill people? They don't kill their own. Because that'd be murder. Now, I know if you act up, they're going to go burn you at a stake. I get it. But they've got their morals, okay? And it stems from God's law written on the heart. We look back at different things in history. Hammurabi's law, which is very similar to the Ten Commandments. Well, how did Hammurabi come up with that? It was written on his heart by God. Oh, and just because Hammurabi's law is older than the Mosaic law, no, it isn't. It's just, I don't have time. We'll bring the creationists in for that. And so, anyway, it's all faith. Let's keep going. We got 10 minutes. Maybe we can finish. Romans 4:16. Huh? Okay, the faith you have in me. All right. We finished Matthew Wednesday night. After Matthew 10, after 15. When y'all came, we were already in Matthew 10, weren't we? Yeah. Uh-huh. All right. I think we were in Matthew 10 when Chris came. I'd have to look back at the dates. Yeah. I was looking through the live streams that are still up. Boy, they go back far with these books. Oh, all right. Verse 16, the Bible says, therefore it is of faith, that it might be by grace, to the end of the promise might be sure, to the end the promise might be sure to all the seed, not that only which is of... Who shrunk my Bible? My arm must be getting long. I got to bring that sucker in, right? Yeah, it's not that. I can't see it. I got to bring it in. And then it's blurred. I don't know. We'll do something. Not that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of faith of Abraham, which is the father of us all. As is written, I have made thee a father of many nations before him whom he believed, even God, who quickened the dead, and calleth those things which be not as though they were. Let's talk through that a little bit. We have justification in verse 16, according to grace. It is of faith, therefore it might be of grace. Faith and grace are related in the same way that works and law is related. Law brings works, faith brings grace. The law encourages us to do, faith encourages us to receive grace. We must receive the truth that God's given us before we can give it out, like we talked about in Sunday morning service. It's of faith. Salvation's of faith, and living is of faith. We call it the Christ life. The Christ life is of faith. It's of faith. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me is a faith statement. He which hath begun a good work and you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ is a faith statement. For we are created as His workmanship. For by grace you are saved through faith, that not yourselves, gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. For we are His workmanship, created in God unto Christ, created unto good works in Christ Jesus, which He hath before ordained that we should walk in them. It is a faith statement. When it says all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose, it's a faith statement. We are predestined. Let me turn over there because we're there. Romans chapter 8, verse 20. Look, we can skip that verse when we get there. Verse 29, Romans 8:29, for whom He did foreknow, He also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. That conformed, the predestined is not to be saved. The predestined is the saved to be conformed to the image of Christ. It's a faith statement. If you're saved, you'll be like Christ one day. Now, whether you allow Him to change you here or you get the shock of eternity when you get in heaven. I kind of prefer to not work my way there, but I kind of prefer to kind of get some progressive sanctification so I'm not shocked and awed when I get there. I mean, I already could be that way. But I want to stand before the Lord having allowed Him to work in me. I'm not trying to embarrass the new believers. I hate doing that. I apologize. But what a fresh slate. What an ability to allow God to change your life. Wow. I love it. Grace and faith are congruous and will draw together in the same chariot. Grace and merit are contrary the one to the other, and they go opposite ways. They cannot be yoked together. If it's merit, it's not grace. If it's grace, it's not merit. Oh, by the way, arrogant person, tell me all you've done. Tell me all you've done. I'm not being rude. I want you to think about that a minute. My sarcasm can be misread, so I apologize. I'm not being rude. Tell me all you've done. And what does that compare to all He's done? I don't mind sharing war stories, but I'd rather glorify God. What He's done. Because I could list things I've done. I mean, 25 years getting married at 17. I mean, you could come, and I'd have to tell you, I say this in jest. I said it when I was at the conference teaching on marriage. You know, we're just so stubborn, neither of us would give up. Until God finally came and got a hold of our hearts and we don't have to worry about it yet. You know, you quit. No, you quit. I ain't doing it first. That's the only thing I have to boast of. God is so good. I could say 12 years at Gospel Light Baptist Church, through the wind, through the fire, through all the turmoil and trouble and people getting mad. People getting mad at other pastors and leaving our church, I don't get. I've walked people out the door saying, why are you leaving? Well, I saw this on Facebook about this pastor. I'm just not being a Baptist anymore. I don't know what to tell you. Lots of humans do bad things too. You going to quit that? Too late. That's too late. Huh? That's what I said. Exactly what I said. No. I can't afford Kroger. I go to Kroger for produce. That's all we go to Kroger for. And because Walmart's produce is sometimes. Their meat, I'll eat it. I can't afford no Kroger meat. But I know you can get it on sale. That's too much work. I'm going to go get cheap meat from Walmart. If it makes me sick, breathing the air in America makes you sick. So drinking the water makes you sick. So whatever. What I'm trying to say is, though, it's a faith. It's a faith. It's a faith. Where did I get off on that subject? I don't know. I'm not finding that thread. That one's gone. But I missed somewhere, jumped a track and went off. I don't know. Huh? Law and faith. Law written in our heart. Let's go back to there. Let's just stop. Let's go right back to there. Law is written on our hearts. If it's of merit, that's it. Merit versus faith, grace. And we can't earn our way. That's it. And then I went into, tell me what you've accomplished. There we go. Found the thread. Thank you, Shelby. Well, it was a group effort. Look, it takes a village. We need more church. Every village has its. Yeah, Miss Magnan. She's owning it. All right, her and Shelby vying for the prize. Show me what you've done. And what I will see is a prideful person that has not yet met grace. I've done things. That's where I got tracked. I've run bus routes. I've built Sunday school classes. I've fought from somebody going out. Can you imagine this? Listen. You get in a fight with the pastor. You're a bus captain. So you go out to all the bus families and tell them how dumb your pastor is and apologize for your pastor to all the bus families before you leave the church. Tell me there ain't a special place for that person. Yeah. And I hope it's not hell, because I don't wish that on nobody. But there's a hovel somewhere in heaven for that person. I don't want to be sitting next to them at the judgment seat of Christ. That's all I got to say. It's going to be a burning fest when their works go. No, but I've gone back to those families and tried to recover those things, and did Bible college. And I'm doing this, as Paul said, give me a moment to be a fool so I can illustrate a point. And Paul said that, remember? Allow me to be foolish. And he started bragging on himself. And I've done that. I've driven 70 miles one way to Bible college while working doubles, staying awake 51 hours, and running a bus route, and leading the singing, and teaching a Sunday school class, and doing choir, and rebuilding a sound booth. I did all of that. And I was watching grace go by. I was arrogant, prideful. And when you're arrogant and prideful, God can't reach you. And you burn up. And you burn out. And what do you do then? Well, hopefully, you find somebody like we did, Brother Coomer. And hopefully y'all find somebody that's trying to do the same. And we can recover. And we can realize it's grace. And we move back. It all ties together. Why can't we see it? Kills me when I look back at what I missed. And I've talked to my preacher about this, and we have common ground on the fact that there was a lot of things he was trying to teach me that I was a little arrogant and prideful to hear. But I'll also say this. Going to youth rallies, going to camps, what do they teach? Entertainment, works, doer mentality. Make a decision, make a decision, make a decision, make a decision. And it's all arrogance. I was the preacher boy's leader. Right? I did the Today's Timothy's in our youth rallies in the area. We did some at, all the different churches. I was the guy that took the teens over to the side that were quote unquote preacher boys, right? And I watched that arrogance rise and didn't know what was going on, and I struggled with it a lot. I have a lot of things I'd do different if I could go back, and it wouldn't change a lot of, not a lick of some things, but I'd change a lot of other things. But why didn't I see it? That it starts with grace. It starts with faith. I tell you, have a real walk with God. So I would go out sowing, and I'd go knock doors. I'd run buses. I'd do this. I'd do that, because I wanted a real walk with God. That's a carnal walk. And I had to change and figure out what faith is. Let's see here. 17 and 18, we'll be done. We'll hope to get through 25 next Sunday. As is written, I have made thee a father of many nations, before whom he believed, even God, who quickened the dead and calleth those things which be not as though they were. Can you imagine it took Abraham like 50 years to figure out how to walk with God before God gave him a son 2 times down in Egypt? And oh, what a mess. Got an illegitimate son running out there in the wilderness. Did you know Ishmael was like 18 years old when he was kicked out of the house with his mom? And you remember the story? Mom is over here crying because her son's starving to death. He's 18-ish. I always read it like there's this baby under a bush. And why would God do that to somebody? He kicked them out with a baby. The boy's like 18. When I found that out, I was like, oh, never mind. Because if you're 18 and can't make it, I don't got nothing for you. I love you. I will help you. I will encourage you. But you got to put shoes down too, right? This boy's 18 crying. Mama said, I need water. Praise the Lord. God said, yeah, you got a bum steer. Here you go. Here you go. And He took care of him. God's more graceful than I am. That's what I just said. That's what just ended up coming out of that phrase. Verse 18, who against hope believed in hope. You know we have to do that in biblical counseling? Chris is outed, so we won't talk about anything we talked about in counseling. But he was a counselee. He's going to give his testimony next week, and then he'll give it at the conference for me. He's just going to practice. If he can do it in front of y'all's faces, he can do it in front of anybody. So y'all give him the... Yeah, and so, but the first few weeks is giving hope without hope. Abraham's leaving Ur to go in this wilderness. To go where? Where was Abraham supposed to go? God said, he knew not where. God said, wander. See that star? Let me tell you a story. That's what He said. He said, look up. All those stars, your seed's going to be more than that. Woo! Wow. So when you come in and get help in church, you got to understand that what seems very difficult is actually there's lots of hope. And that's Abraham. Gets hope, believed in hope, that he might become the father of many nations, according to that which was spoken, so shall thy seed be. Abraham's turning 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Was he 80 when Isaac was born? Or was he 100? Was he over? Nikki? How old was Abraham when Isaac was born? He was 100. 70? 80? 90? No baby! Except for this whining, crying thing over here he shouldn't have had. 100. Sarah. What is this? Hey, I'm the guy that reads the Bible like it is. The Bible said it restored to them their youth. I think one day Abraham went to bed looking like a 100-year-old man. Woke up the next day with no wrinkles, with a keen eye, and a pregnant wife. And went, what is going on? That's how I think. You don't have to believe it, but I think it because he said it restored to him the youth. And people say, yeah, it just made her ovaries work. Well, why did he have to stop there? Why did he have to only restore ovaries and uterus? Why couldn't he restore the whole body? By the way, there's the other side of that coin. He had to restore Abraham too. So he restored both of them to their youth. Now, people lived a lot longer then, so maybe he restored them to 80. I don't know. So, anyway, let's pray.